So the first question we ask every time, and we'll do with a raise of hands, is who has done every devotional up to today? All righty, now let's do the hard.
Wait, do you believe that?
Well, we're going to see the other answer real quick.
Well, I was just looking at some of the hands and going, no.
Okay, who, like me, has missed at least a day in this past week? I believe that.
I do too. Somebody will be here to shoot you with water guns when you walk out in just a few minutes.
Now, like Matthew said, we can't ask this question to everybody, but I'll lean to Matthew here for real quick. What devotional the past week spoke the most to you?
Well, remember, we can't do this exactly neatly because we ended our group last Wednesday, which means I'm not going Sunday to now, I'm going Thursday to now. And the one that really moved me is last Friday's, which was Ezekiel Fish. If you guys remember the testimony of Ezekiel Fish, he's one of our missionaries in Thailand, and I just think his testimony is so powerful. Now, I got to confess, I was born in Thailand. My dad was in the Air Force, and so he was stationed in Bangkok during Vietnam. So I was born in Thailand, which I do not remember, but somehow that kind of gives that area a special place in my heart because I've seen pictures, so there's something. But it was amazing to me that here's a guy who went into a people group, the Lisu and the Lahu, that literally, when he went in, had 0 Christians. And now they are considered one of the most evangelized people groups in the world. That just really moves my heart. And the thing that really got me, we were reading that, and then we've had so much bad weather. Ezekiel said he walked an entire day through the jungle to get to this village. And I was thinking, good grief, there's a cold rain. It's hard for us even to drive 20 minutes to church. You know what I'm saying? And here's a guy who literally walked like 10 hours to get through the jungle. It's very encouraging to me and moving to me to hear a testimony like that. And we talk about a life that roars. Man, that guy's getting it done, you know?
Yeah.
What about you?
So that devotional was kind of my favorite, but for a different reason. It was because one night during bedtime, Hope said, I want to read your book for the devotional. And I believe that's the one that has, there's men approaching us with AK-47s and all this stuff.
Awesome.
And so I'm putting my daughter to sleep and reading about these guys coming up. I was having to rephrase and rebuild the whole story, and the good guys won. But
sweet dreams, sweetie.
But really, day 8 was the one that just hit me. And I spoke of this last week, but this year I'm trying to really refocus my time, and it's the oil and the maintenance and being prepared and having enough oil, and about devoting your time to be in the scripture and to refill my oil so that I'm prepared for whatever God's called me to do. So that one just hit me right where I was as I read it. I
love that. Absolutely love it. Now, we have a distinguished panel over here to my left, and I'll let you decide who to my left here is distinguished, but let me introduce them to you. And by the way, I'd just like to point out that 2/3 of the people to my left are way prettier than the ones that we had last week, and I'll let you decide who those 2/3 are. This is April Phelps. Yeah. This is April Phelps to my left, and then, well, they're all to my left, and then Amanda Anderson and Justin Lackey. And I gave them 2 questions to choose from today, but the first question is the same one that Daniel and I asked. So they may, and I don't know what they're going to say, which is really, really terrifying for me and probably for Daniel too. But we gave them a choice of 2. The first one is, just talk about a devotion in the last week that really touched you or meant something to you. But then we also offered a trap door. Last week we asked those 3 guys, can you think of a time that you were brave or a time you chickened out? So they could take that option too, okay, or either. I don't know what I was trying to say, so forgive me. Just talk, April. You just start. You probably have to move it. Yeah, there you go. That's it.
So Matthew asked me what I wanted to do, and I decided that I want to go with a time that I was courageous. So for those of you that know me, I married Jim. I hope that's enough, right?
that was courageous. Good grief.
But anyway, so after Jim and I got married, I thought, well, what story can I tell? So I thought this would be a good one. So after we got married, one of the things that Jim and I truly wanted was children. A lot of families do. And so therefore, we set on our journey to have children. Unfortunately, it didn't happen just like that. So we went through 4 years of infertility issues. We went through medicines, we went through specialists, we went through different doctors. And this whole time we're thinking, okay, is this God shutting the door and we're just not, letting him shut it? But Jim and I kept praying through this, and every time we did, God was like saying, keep pursuing this, keep doing this. So eventually, one of our doctors sent us to a specialist in Charlotte. And in Charlotte, we met this esteemed doctor in his field and kind of walk into that office and, have all the plaques and all the awards and accolades on the walls. And you're thinking, okay, this guy knows his stuff. So not a warm fuzzy, but we get in there and we start our conversation with him. And he's like, this is what it's going to take. And he offered us the opportunity to have IVF. If anybody has ever heard of that, that's in vitro fertilization. So we thought, okay, are we going to do this? And we said, sure. God got us this far, he's going to take us the rest of the way. So, and, follow that journey. So when we got there, he told us this was going to be a long process, and it sure was. And in that process, Jim and I were just like uncharted territory. No one in our family had experienced this. None of our friends at the time had problems with this. So the only person we were relying on was God. That's about all we had, but that was enough. And so as we continued traveling the journey, it was the day of IVF. And so we were very nervous that morning, and the doctor calls. Now, think about it. This physician and this highly esteemed person, he calls us and says, I have concerns a little bit about this things that we're going to be doing this morning, and I want to give you my suggestions. I'll never forget it. I was sitting there on the phone, and I said, I'm sorry, but God, Jim, and I already talked about this, and our decision has already been made, so we're going to go with our decision. And after I said that, I was like, I did not just say that to a physician. And oddly, he kind of said, without, a little bit of hesitation, he said, all right, we'll go with your wishes. And so, therefore, we went ahead and forward with it, and I'm proud to say that I'm glad that I was bold that day to mention my God's name, because guess what? Twins, 14 years later, are here. So we have twins, and they are here, and it's kind of funny. When the doctor actually finished or learning that we were pregnant and with twins, he actually called us, and he said, very glad you had a sound decision that you stuck by it. So he said, so it was a really cool story, and that's kind of the time I was bold.
Love it. We guys give April a round of applause, please. Thank you so much. And by the way, just when you said you married Jim, I thought that was courageous enough, so I didn't know if you were going to have to say anything else or not. All right, Amanda, you're up.
It's like the Masked Singer, except the Masked Talker. It's like, who is going to talk?
Exactly.
So the question was, when you chickened out or when you were courageous or brave. I'm a chicken. Like, I like safety. I like comfort. I'm never going to go fast. I'm never going to skydive. I'm never going to go out of my comfort zone unless my husband makes me, and he's been taking me out of my comfort zone since we were dating. But if it wasn't for that, I would have always just never done anything that made me scared or nervous. And right after we got married, he said, we're going to move to Charlotte, which we weren't planning on that. He just married me and told me we were going to do that. And and since I've always been one for safety and comfort, I am bent to fear. So I'd always been a little bit nervous about stuff, but I also had a carefree spirit of just fun and people and being around all types of things. And when we moved, I all of a sudden started having intense fear that just like trapped me from, I didn't want to go anywhere alone. I didn't walk alone anymore. I didn't run alone anymore. If we went to church, I was fidgeting, and I would get like, I feel like I couldn't breathe because I was focused on some random person in the back that I had imagined in my head was going to completely destroy our lives. And that's what would happen anytime. I didn't go to the movies then because I would just imagine all these scenarios in my head. I would be in a hotel, and the sounds, I thought military jets were getting ready to bomb us, and I thought tsunamis were going to happen from the ocean. So my mind was just going all these crazy things that just weren't normal. I'd even talk to people, and they'd be like, no, I don't think about that when I when I go to church or when I go to the beach. And so it really just took so much life out of me because I felt like it felt like something was dragging me. Like I could feel like just evil that was coming at me. But then again, I thought I guess other people fear crazy things too. And then we had friends that wanted us to move across from them, but they lived in a place that I was scared of. Like, I was scared to death of the street they lived in, and other people were scared of the street that they lived in too. And so when we go visit them, they worked at a Christian mission organization that was near there. And when we went to visit them, there was a lot of street traffic, and I would sit in the car until everything was gone. And I'd look, and I would just like run inside, and I would say, man, I could never live somewhere that was so scary to me. I could never, ever do that. And they were like, we think you should live across the street. And I was like, that is the funniest thing I've ever heard. Like, I would never do such a thing. But for some reason, we thought maybe we should. I don't know. We love them. They're really fun. We'd have really cool neighbors. And then we decided to do that, even though it just seemed so outrageous. And then right before we said we were going to move, and I'm still in this intense fear state of everything making me scared. Right before we moved, the owners called and said, well, I just want to let you know someone got shot down the street last week. So we understand if you don't want to move. But for some strange reason, we said we still feel at peace about living somewhere that I would never live in. And so before we moved, I was so scared. I was just so scared. And I prayed over the house, which is not something I typically did. I had written down every scripture. My prayer journals from that time had every single fear you could ever imagine with scripture, with all the fear, but I never felt relief from it when I prayed. I was just worry praying. I'm like, as I prayed when I was fearing, but it never left me in that moment. So I prayed over the house, and then I drove the neighborhood, and I prayed over the neighborhood, and then we moved in. And as we lived there, the hold that fear had on me started going away. And I remember the first night I stayed alone by myself. Nick was somewhere. Before we moved there, I stayed alone one other time, and I stayed up all night long because I was so scared. And this time I slept, and I woke up, and I was so joyous. I was running around the house, praising God, because it was my biggest fear to just be there. And then it was my biggest fear to be alone, and all that had happened at the same time. And so our families were excited when we moved to here, and we weren't there anymore because everyone else was like, this is slightly crazy. But I know that it was going there that pushed me so far out of my comfort zone that made the fear hold come apart. And then that year, all in this time frame, there was this mission trip to Africa in a Civil War torn country that I was like, I'll never do that. That's crazy. That's really sweet that other people would go there, but I will never do that. But in that time, we ended up going there, and then we ended up going to the slums in Guatemala, doing all the things that I said I would never do because I'm a scaredy cat. And then the scaredy cat became so engrossed in fear that I didn't want to go anywhere except be inside with a couple people that I knew. And then I have not experienced, now I've experienced fear, but I haven't experienced slavery to fear ever since we moved to the place I said I would never live.
That's awesome. Will you guys give Amanda a round of applause, please? Amanda, thank you so much. And Justin, you're up. So Justin, just pull that mic up kind of close so you're speaking right into it, and then do your thing.
I had it far enough away so when we were singing the worship song, I sung so low that you couldn't hear me. Between the two questions that were brought to me to answer, the only one that I can really come up with is a combination of the two, where I was chickened out and where I had the courage to act. And I do want to say, though, today's lesson particularly hit home for me because it relates to what I'm about to share. Redeem the times, for the days are evil. And believe it or not, prior to this meeting, actually before my wife and I started attending here, the Lord had placed that on my heart during a private devotion that I had. And you don't take for granted the time that you do have when you have people who are getting sick and passing away. So you want to redeem all the time in a positive sense anyway. But let me bring this thing home for you so that we can get going. I don't want to talk too long. There's this fella at my job. His name is Eric, and I drive a dump truck for a construction company, nothing real fancy. So I bought me a little cheap CB so that I can talk to the other truck drivers, and he did something that I thought was a pretty unintelligent move. So I called him out on it, and there was a little bit of a back and forth there for a second. I'm thinking, I didn't represent Christ well about the way that I responded or reacted. And the chickened out part is going back and, sweeping it under the rug. Oh, it's okay. Nobody needs to know that I made a mistake on something that I said that was incorrect. So that same day or a day or two after we were scheduled to be on the same job, and I came up to his truck and told him that the way that I responded to his mistake was not the way that would be pleasing to my Heavenly Father. And I'd like to share the gospel of Jesus with him. And believe it or not, he kind of brushed it off. And then the next time I seen him, he came up to my rig and told me that he accepted Christ as his Lord.
Wow.
And I got a chance to pray with that guy, and a couple of the other drivers came up. And it's this big corral now of guys that I meet now. Either we talk about it on the CB or they call me directly on my phone, and we'll either pray or talk about it. But I say that in light of the same thing I tell them, is that I do not walk a straight line all the time. I'm not perfect. My wife can be the one to tell you that for sure. So redeeming the time for me has always been equivalent to every opportunity. Whether we're aware of it or not, we represent Christ by our conduct, by the way that we respond to things, and we're not to be looked at as similar to the world, but totally different. Totally different in the way that we respond to things, totally different in the way that we react to our situations, the stuff that happens to us, because we don't have control over that, but we do have control over how we respond. And in that way, we represent Christ.
Love it. We guys give Justin a round of applause, please. You're on.
Good evening. Thank you, Amanda, April, and Justin, for sharing your hearts with us. We come now to the time of prayer, and we're going to do just like we did last week. We have prayer requests that we'll put up on the screen and prompt you, and then we'll finish out in a prayer as well. Yahweh, you know the heart of each person here. You know their struggles, their pains, their joys, and their praises. And we just thank you for the privilege that we have to gather, whether it's here or in our homes, to be able to pray for one another and worship you with complete freedom. Please help us to acknowledge that freedom daily so that we can further your kingdom here locally. And may we pray that you be with those who are risking their lives daily to spread your gospel in areas where these same freedoms do not currently exist. Thank you so much for the blessings that you have continually poured out to us. And thank you so much for your grace and your mercy that you pour out to us so abundantly, even though we don't deserve it. Father, help us to become a visible representation of faithfulness that you are in this broken world. And as Moses said, teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. In your most precious and holy name, amen.
Amen. Well, let me welcome you again, and thank you for being here tonight. I know, man, it is just nasty cold, and the forecast is nasty, and it has been nice to see the sunshine for a couple of days here. I'd almost forgotten that thing was up there, so that's been kind of nice. If you have your Bible, I'd love for you to be able to follow along with what we're going to do. And while you get it, I just want to make a quick, well, I guess the best way to say this is a quick challenge. You know, for the last several years, we've used our home groups as a way to move into a new season of Leave It Better. And so each of our home groups has done a project. Well, that's a little bit tough this year. A lot of our groups are virtual, and some of our groups are like this, and how could we get out and do a project together? And so what we've asked everybody to do instead, what we're going to challenge everybody to do, is to do a project with your family and to send us pictures and let us highlight some of those as we go. We had last week, and this is a really cool number I'm going to share with you. This is a hot off the press number. By our best estimate, we had 923 people who participated in home groups last week, which in this season right now is like not just good, but really exciting. Well, what we'd like to have is we'd like to have every one of those people involved in some kind of a Leave It Better project. And they don't have to be huge. It could be something small. It could be something that you do with your kids. It could be something that you do for a neighbor or somebody at your work or whatever. Just a small act of love that we can do together to organically start our Leave It Better season. We have a list online. If you go on our website to pinedale.church and click at the place you signed up for groups, it comes up with that web page that actually the URL is jesusiswhy.church. But if you go to that, at the top, one of the things that you'll see is about our Leave It Better. And there is a list of suggestions of things that you could do. But I'd love for you to take a look at that because we're going to talk about that a little bit more next week. All right, so if you have your Bible open, we're going to be in Psalm chapter 90, and we can't serve coffee at this thing, which drives me crazy, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be interested enough to keep you awake at 7:37 for the next 20 minutes without coffee, but Daniel will be. He's going to be awesome. So every time I get boring, Daniel's going to interrupt me and just jump in and say something really pithy and exciting. So just right. Get ready. Billy Graham was asked what he was most surprised by in life. Now remember, Billy Graham lived a pretty long life, and he did a lot in his life, and yet his answer, what surprised you most in your life, he said, it's the brevity of it. I was surprised at how quick it went. And I think instinctively we all feel that. Did you know that the only time in our life where we really want to get old is when we're kids? If you go down to Sean and April's department right now and you find a 10-year-old and you say, hey, 10-year-old, when's your birthday? I mean, they are so excited. You find one of those kids and say, how old are you? They don't just tell you how old they are. They answer in fractions. How old am I? 6.5. It's like 6 isn't enough. It's 6.5. I'll be 7 in a month. Nobody is ever 36.5. You know what I'm saying? That never happens. You never ask an adult and they say, well, I'm 41 3/4, but you're 5.5, you're gonna be 6 in 3 weeks or whatever. Now, when you get into your teens, it's like nobody can hold you back, right? You literally jump to the next number. How old are you? I'm gonna be 16. Well, how old are you? 14, but I'm going to be 16, really soon. And then comes that great day of your life when you turn 21. And even the words sound like a ceremony, you know, you become 21. You know, you've arrived. But then you know what happens next? You turn 30. You turn 30. It makes you sound like bad milk, you know? You turn 30, so we had to throw him out or whatever, you know? You became 21. You turned 30. And then you're pushing 40. And then you reach 50. And then you make it to 60. Right? And then you build up so much speed that you hit 70. And then by the time you get in your 80s and 90s, you just simply are. I mean, it's like you just simply say, I'm in my 80s. I'm in my 90s. And then this strange thing happens. If you make it to over 100, and you've known people who reached that age probably, if you make it to over 100, you become a little kid again. How old are you? I'm 100 and a half. I'll be 101. I'll be 101 in 3 weeks. You know, I mean, it's this weird thing that happens, but life is so fast. Well, tonight we're going to talk about a way to use our time on earth, this brief time that we have on earth, in the best possible way. And that's really what Psalm 90 is about.
So as someone who has turned 31 in the last year.
Dude, I hit 47, so I get it.
The older we get, the more we think about how to use our time wisely. I mean, more and more stuff happens. You have kids, you have job, you have so much filling in there. You have to figure out, how do I make this efficient? You make to-do list. When I was 18, a to-do list was a joke. Just do what you want to do. Just keep going. But Psalm 90 is when Moses wrote this. Think about this. His life, he spent the first 40 years of his life under the Pharaoh's daughter's care. So he was in luxury. Right. And then he left the comfort of the palace and he became a shepherd, chasing sheep around the wilderness in the Sinai Peninsula. And then he spent 40 years of his life rebellious with a bunch of Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, but not quite in the promised land. So as they were camped somewhere in the wilderness, he wrote Psalm 90. In verse 12 he prayed, "So teach us to number our days that we may present to you a heart of wisdom." And he concluded the psalm with a prayer. "Let the favor of the Lord our God be upon us, and confirm for us the work of our hands." Yes, confirm the work of our hands. The poignant repetition of his final plea there shows where Moses' mind was. He wanted God to confirm his work, and in other words, he asked God to make it count. So, Matthew?
Make it count. Make my time on this earth count. I mean, isn't that what we want? God, confirm my time here. Let's read the psalm together. This is going to be the first 6 verses if you're following along, all right? "Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You return man to dust, and you say, 'Return, O children of man.' For 1,000 years in your sight are but as yesterday when it is past, or as a watch in the night." You get the point there. Time to God, 1,000 years, like nothing. He says you sweep them away. You sweep those years away like a flood. They're like a dream. Like the grass that is renewed in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and is renewed. In the evening it fades and withers. All right, now hold that thought. And understand that what God's doing, or that what Moses is doing here, is he is contrasting right off the bat something that's really important for us to understand. God's eternal nature and our frailty. God is eternal, we are not. I mean, not on this earth anyway. We live in this flesh. And I think this is an important line to draw, or important time to draw a very important line. There is a difference between being immortal and being eternal. And I think this is an important difference. Daniel, what is the difference? Immortality and eternity. What's the difference in that?
I guess with immortality, it's more like your soul has a starting point, and then it keeps going. Like we're here on this earth, but then when our body dies, our soul keeps going.
So we are immortal.
Yes, our souls.
Right, exactly, yes.
But God is eternal because he had no starting point. He has no ending point.
Makes sense. So we have a starting point, and then we keep living. God existed before the mountains, right? I mean, God existed before the earth. Now, here's really the miracle of this, that when we have faith in Christ, we come into possession of eternal life. And so therefore, we're part of eternity. But while we're on this earth, our bodies are very frail. And by the way, notice how Moses uses these images to show how frail we are. Did you catch those? If you have a pen in your hand, this would be a great place to circle some of these. In verse 3, he says, we're like dust. I mean, just, we're gone. In verse 4, he says, we are like a watch in the night that's about 3 hours long. It's nothing. A brief flood after the rain that soon dries up. This verse 5. Grass that shoots up before the evening and then it's cut down. You get it, it's like quick. It's temporary. If you're an NC State fan, and God bless you if you are, but if you're an NC State fan, it's like when NC State gets a lead and you know this isn't going to last. And it doesn't. I mean, boom, it's gone just like that. It's here 1 minute, it's gone the next, right?
Yeah, so what's Abraham's point here? Like, what's he trying to do with these, metaphors?
Abraham's point, we're dust, right? We are creatures of time and we're frail. And we're nothing unless we're in a right relationship with an eternal God. That's our only hope. Through faith in Christ, we can know God and share in his eternal life. Outside of that, we're in trouble, right?
Yeah. Let's continue reading from verse 7. For we are brought to an end by your anger. By your wrath we are dismayed. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your presence. For all our days pass away under your wrath. We bring our years to an end like a sigh. The years of our life are 70, or even by reason of strength 80, yet their span is but toil and trouble. They are soon gone and we fly away. Who considers the power of your anger and your wrath according to the fear of you? So teach us to number our days, that we may get a heart of wisdom. So remember, this is Moses speaking, and even though we don't know for certain which life events he's referring to in this, he's referencing Israel's experience of God's anger in the past. It's probably from their rebellion in the wilderness.
Right.
Or, their repeated failures over and over and over again.
Right, which is the whole Old Testament, right?
So let's focus on verse 3 here. What are the specific problems that are detailed?
Everybody look at verse 3 here and think about what he's saying. He talks about our iniquities, right? God, it's our iniquities. This is God's word and will, but we're choosing to twist it to justify our choices and behaviors to the contrary. Moses says, God, we have these iniquities that are in front of you, our secret sins. That's like, it's our futile attempts to live this dull life, and over here it seems like we're embracing God's way, but over here we're just actually living to satisfy our own desires. And God knows those things. I mean, Moses' point here is you can't do that. You're living a lie right now. Hebrews 4:12 is one of my favorite passages. Look at this. It says, for the word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, and piercing as far as the division of soul and spirit, of joints and marrow. God's word is able to divide soul and spirit, joints and marrow. He's able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And the writer of Hebrews says, and there is no creature hidden from his sight, but all things are open and laid bare to the eyes of him with whom we have to do. Now, this is really a profound passage. And I guess the point here is God knows your heart. And so when Moses is talking about, all the things we went through and all the troubles and all the iniquities and all the secret sins, this isn't talking about hardships in life. This is talking about rejecting God's will and ways, which God knows. I mean, he knows the intentions of your heart. And Moses is saying, as you're living your life on this earth, God knows how you're using your minutes. He knows from the inside out, right?
Yeah. So according to the Psalm, what is the result of living according to your own ways and incurring God's anger for it? See, our days are finite, or our years are finite. They're fruitless if we're not living in God's point of view, in his path. They only produce labor and sorrow, as the verse says in verse 10, with no lasting benefits, for it soon will be gone and it'll just fly away. In other words, the opportunity provided to man in which to either become eternally acceptable or eternally removed is limited.
You see that? I mean, hear that. Say that last thing you said again, because this was big.
So either we have the opportunity to make our life, our days, eternally acceptable or eternally removed.
I mean, that's it. There's something that's so important about this, because when Moses says in verse 12, when he says, God, teach us to number our days, teach us to use our days wisely. What he's saying here is you need to make your life count, and you're going to make it count by how you invest those minutes. What is it that you're investing your life in? Right? So we got to put ourselves in the things of God. You know, the stock market is up and down. You invest in Bitcoin, you're probably up. I don't know what the other thing you said you invested in,
It's a Dogecoin.
There you go, and I don't understand.
Do you know what that is? It's a meme coin that's had some super weird trends lately.
This is all over my head. I truly don't understand any of it. I've asked Daniel to explain Bitcoin to me 20 times, and every time I go, so what is it? Can you put it in your pocket? I don't get it. What are you buying? Anyway, you invest in this stuff. It's up and down. It's here and there, right? But what Moses is saying is there is only one safe investment. You've got to put your time in the things of God. You've got to put your time on the things that matter to God. And of course, the things that matter to God are people. Is that we're investing in ministry. We're investing in people because people aren't eternal, but they're immortal. We have the opportunity to live forever. Look at verse 13 right now. Here's Moses' prayer. Now to me, this is so poignant the way he ends this passage, because he starts to pray for the people. And he says, return, O Lord. How long? Have pity on your service. Satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad for as many days as you have afflicted us, and for as many years as we have seen evil. Let your work be shown to your servants, and your glorious power to their children. Let the favor of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish the work of our hands upon us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. Now, what Moses is doing here is he is praying on behalf of the people. So Daniel, walk us through this. How does he begin his prayer? He's praying, he's now on his knees. He's saying, God, we've been here and we've been all over the map, and we know we've sinned, and Lord, we know that you're eternal and our days here are numbered, and God, teach us to number our days and to use them wisely. And then he gets down on his knees and starts to pray for his people, and he starts, how?
Return. But not as if God's presence wasn't there, but his favor on his people.
Yeah.
He wants to restore that favor and the blessing of his people in the wake of all of their decisions that they made in the past. He asked for 4 strong walls in our relationship with God. He asked for the wall of wisdom, the wall of forgiveness, the wall of stability through our days, and through renewal through those verses.
Wisdom. God, grant me wisdom. God, forgive me. God, I need stability, foundation. God, I need to be renewed. Is that big or what? I mean, 4 things. And if you prayed for those 4 things every morning, God, I need wisdom to know the right things to do today. I need forgiveness for when I stumble. I need to keep my feet on solid ground, Lord, because it's a shifting landscape out there. I need to be renewed daily. Man, what a prayer. Pray that prayer, good grief. Which makes me want to ask you. I want you guys, this is rhetorical, so nobody needs to stand up and shout out an answer, but I want you to think about this a minute. When you listen to Moses' prayer and you hear those 4 things Daniel just said, wisdom, forgiveness, stability, renewal. Wisdom, forgiveness, stability, renewal. When you think about your life right now and you think about your present circumstance, which of those 4 things seems most significant to you right now? In other words, what do you need to pray for right now? You need all 4, but what do you need to be praying for right now? And do you turn to God? Do you remember to turn to God and express this to him? God, thank you for blessing me this way. And God, I need this. See, you got to understand, God had taught the Israelites in the wilderness an important lesson that at one point they forgot. God had taught them, you need to depend on me for your sustenance every day. That this is the way to live a life that really counts. He had taught them from the beginning, you need to be able to live in a way where you can see what matters and you can receive that from me every day. And he did that literally in the wilderness. Do you remember this? Daniel, do you remember this? God taught them this lesson in the wilderness about the value of a day.
Well, I think even more better taught a lesson through this object called manna.
There it is.
Which was every morning they had to wake up to get their sustenance for their day. God had to supply it to them. So when they woke up in the morning and they went outside and on the ground, there would be their food, which would be, one, a blessing, but two, just this constant reminder of God providing what they needed.
Right. And I mean, you guys remember all the rules around that, right? I mean, they literally were not allowed to collect more than they could use that day,
Yeah,
right?
a funny illustration for this one. If you don't know, manna would turn into maggots after a couple days. And the church I went to
Is
when I
that
was
the story you're going to tell Hope tonight at bedtime?
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
About the bread with the maggots.
When I was in college, our church that we went to, our communion bread and at the coffee bar was Panera leftovers from the day before. And they decided one time they were just gonna, take that bag of leftovers and just put it upstairs in the office at the end of the church, and then they would have it throughout the week. But they found out very quickly that Panera bread, without its preservatives and everything, turns to maggots and bugs and mold. So they came back, I think it was a holiday, so they came in Tuesday morning to a bag of a great illustration of manna.
That is a great sermon illustration, and also the super gross.
Oh,
That
yeah.
It's just ridiculously gross. Did you have that Deuteronomy passage?
I did. Deuteronomy 8:3. He humbled you and let you be hungry and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, that he might make you understand that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by everything that proceeds out of the mouth of the Lord.
So there's this physical food, manna. There's spiritual food, God's word. And what he's saying is, I'm providing for you every day. Now keep in mind those 4 things Daniel said earlier, because I just think that's so profound. There's this wisdom and this stability and this forgiveness and this renewal. And God is providing day after day after day, which is why Moses is requesting now. He's saying, God, we need your provision. God, we need your joy. God, we need your gladness, because we're enduring all this stuff around us. And God, we need this to be renewed every day. Because we can become so focused on all of this other stuff that we're going to miss this greater good that you're doing, God, which is the way that you would miss the good of your years. I mean, if you're not watching what God's doing, the years just pass by. And one day you look back and all you're filled with is regrets. And what Moses is saying is, God, keep us tied in with what you're giving every single day. Which is why in verse 16, Moses prays, God, we just want your work to be done. God, give us what you want, because in the middle of everything else, he knows we need to be more concerned about God's glory than in our own situation. And I think this is kind of the rebuttal to the situation we're in. Man's work is futile. It provides only labor and sorrow. That's what he said in verse 10. But in contrast, God, your work reveals your majesty. And so when we're working to ourselves and we're just trying to gather and we're trying to store and we're trying to make it happen, and I'm going to make my own stability and I'm going to make my own renewal and I'm going to make my life, when you're doing that, you're missing it, because your work is futile. You can't take it with you. Jesus said, don't store up on this earth where moth and rust destroy. You're storing up something eternal. And what Moses is really getting to is that we have to set aside our personal yearnings, our personal desires, and embrace this bigger thing than us. Not just the work itself, but the heart and soul and mind pursuing it. And that when you do that, there is a blessing in this. And when you can grab that, when you can say, I'm living for something that I literally cannot get myself, but God, if you'll give this to me one day at a time, and renew it in me one day at a time, suddenly you've got days that count. Moses said, teach us to number our days. Lord, teach us to use them well. Teach us to make them count. And this is the specific application. So the question for you is, are there parts of your day, are there activities in your life that really aren't accomplishing something that's bigger? Now, we all have disposable minutes. We need those. You need minutes to put your feet up. You need minutes to watch something dumb on TV or go outside and just lay in the sunshine. I mean, you need minutes that you can waste. I get that. You need money that's disposable income too. But we're talking about the heart of your life. Do you have arenas of your life where you're out of fellowship with God and you're building to yourself instead of being renewed by God. The key for us is to be renewed each day, to every day come to God with open hands and say, Lord, I want to receive this day from you. What have you got for me today, Lord? It's going to be different maybe. Maybe there's a challenge today. Maybe there's something scary today and I'm going to have to be courageous. But what have you got for me today, Lord? What are you going to put in front of me? And then, Lord, help me to do that. And God, I'm going to entrust it to you because I know that you're going to use this day in me for your glory. And that's it. When we do that, we are living our days to the fullest. And you get to the end of the day and the sun goes down and you say, you know what, Lord, I had a good day with you today. And you gave me what I needed today. And so God, renew me and prepare me for tomorrow. That is a life well lived. And when you can get in that kind of rhythm, one day at a time, Lord, teach me to use this day. Man, there's a power to that. Here's Moses at the end of his life, who's lived a life, man. I mean, you can go to the library, there's sections on Moses' life, and yet he gets to the end of his life. He says, God, it goes fast. So teach me to use this, to use it well. I want to pray with you, and we're going to pray together that God will use us this week and help us to use our time well. Lord, we've been talking about boldness, and we've been talking about this roar. Lord, courage and the opportunities that you put in front of us. But Lord, those aren't opportunities that we can manufacture. Lord, we need to receive from you what you have for us one day at a time. And so God, help us to do that tomorrow, to wake up tomorrow and embrace a new day. Help us to do it tonight, even with the hours that we still have awake. Lord, to see the opportunities in front of us. And Father, I just pray that you will give us wisdom to be able to know the right things to do. Lord, that you'll give us forgiveness because, Lord, we stumble so often. Lord, that you'll give us stability so that our feet are at a firm place. And Lord, that you will renew us day by day for your glory, for your purpose. Jesus, thank you for that opportunity. Thank you, God, for this study. And Lord, as we go through another week now, as we move into week 3 already of the study, Lord, build in us and give us what we need again, one day at a time until we meet here again. Jesus, we ask this in your name. Amen. If you have a testimony that you would like to share, let us know. You can email Daniel or me. If you have a prayer request that you would like for us to pray for next week, let us know. And we are your home group leaders, so if there's a way that we can help you as you go through this, just reach out to us. We're not hard to get in touch with. So however we can be a friend to you, we want to. God bless you. Go pick up your kids before the nursery workers yell at me, and I hope you guys have a great week.